What would you think if I told you that the chase for the one is a profound distraction from the most important relationship you will ever have? It's a pursuit born of a deep, unexamined longing, a projection of an ideal onto a future partner. The modern woman is often taught to believe that her worth, her wholeness, and her ultimate happiness lie just beyond the horizon, in the arms of a man who will recognize her, validate her, and complete her. But what if this romantic quest is not a destination but a diversion? What if the hero's journey is not to find a partner, but to confront the fractured pieces of herself? This is the central tenet of Carl Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming a unified whole person, distinct from the collective psyche and the expectations of others. It is a path that few dare to walk, for it requires a descent into the dark, forgotten chambers of the soul. For the young woman, this journey begins not with a lover, but with the painful awareness of her own incompleteness. She feels a gnawing emptiness, a sense of not enoughness, that she tries to fill with external validation, be it from social media likes, a demanding career, or the fleeting attention of a man. This is the shadow, at work, the disowned parts of the self that have been exiled from conscious awareness. It is the part of you that holds your unexpressed anger, your deepest insecurities, your raw, untamed desires. Society from a young age teaches the feminine to repress these parts, to be nice, to be pleasing, to be palatable. And so, the woman builds a persona, a well-polished mask designed to attract and appease, all while the wild, authentic self languishes in the shadows. This is the state of being unindividuated. You are a constellation of other people's expectations, a reflection in the mirror of the male gaze, an echo of a self you've yet to meet. The pursuit of the one then becomes a desperate search for someone to project your own unconscious wholeness onto. You look for a man to be your missing piece, your rescuer, your divine masculine counterpart. But this is not love. It is an act of psychological dependency. The man you find will inevitably fail to meet these impossibly high standards because he is not an archetype. He is a man, burdened by his own unconscious and his own unhealed wounds. He too is searching, projecting, and longing for a fantasy that doesn't exist. Jung spoke of the anima and the animus, the unconscious feminine within a man and the unconscious masculine within a woman. The unindividuated woman projects her idealized animus onto the men she encounters, seeing a god, a hero, a king, where there is only a mortal man struggling to find his own way. This projection is the source of so much heartache and disillusionment. The moment he reveals his humanity, his flaws, his fears, his ordinary nature, the illusion shatters, and the woman is left with the same emptiness she started with, perhaps even deeper than before. To escape this cycle of disappointment, the modern woman must cease her external search and turn inward. She must begin the terrifying and exhilarating work of shadow integration. This is not a gentle process. It requires the courage to sit with your own pain, to confront the parts of you that you have hidden and reviled. It is the moment you admit your own rage, your own lust, your own jealousy, not as character flaws, but as powerful, unexpressed energies that, when acknowledged and integrated, become sources of immense strength. This is the first step toward becoming the one for yourself. You are not waiting to be chosen, you are choosing to become whole. This is a radical act of self-possession. It is the Stoic ideal of focusing on what you can control, your own inner world, and detaching from the chaotic, unpredictable whims of the external world and the men within it. The path of individuation is not a race, it is a pilgrimage back to yourself. This path of self-possession is fraught with peril. It is a lonely road, for the woman who embarks upon it will find her old relationships and social circles suddenly feel hollow. The woman who has begun to own her shadow, her power, her anger, her unapologetic self, no longer fits neatly into the roles she was assigned. The people who once admired her for her pleasant, agreeable persona may become unsettled. They may accuse her of being selfish, or cold, or difficult. This is the moment of truth, the test of her resolve. The unindividuated woman would retreat, would apologize, would shrink back into the familiar, stifling confines of her old self. But the woman on the path of individuation stands firm. She understands that their discomfort is not a reflection of her wrongness, but a reflection of her integrity. She is no longer in the business of managing other people's perceptions of her. This brings us to a crucial Stoic principle, the radical acceptance of what is outside your control. The opinions of others, the whims of a man's attention, the unpredictable currents of external life, all are indifferent to your worth. They are not to be relied upon. The Stoic woman builds her self-worth not on the shifting sands of external validation, but on the bedrock of her own character. Seneca would say, associate with people who are likely to improve you. And so she does, but first, she must become that person for herself. She must become her own most trusted ally, her own fiercest defender. She must practice apatheia, not as an absence of emotion, but as an absence of emotional disturbance from external events. The chaos of a man's inconsistency, the sting of a rejection, these things cannot touch the core of her being because her worth is an internal currency, not an external one. The unindividuated woman, by contrast, is a prisoner of her own projections. She is a psychic vampire seeking to draw life and purpose from another person because she has not yet tapped into her own inexhaustible wellspring. She sees a man and immediately begins to script a future, to assign him the role of her savior, her provider, her everything. This is not love. It is a desperate attempt to avoid the terror of self-confrontation. She has not done the work to heal her attachment wounds, to integrate the abandoned child within her who believes she is only worthy of love if she earns it, if she performs for it, if she sacrifices for it. The process of individuation demands a fierce kind of self-love, a love so profound it is indistinguishable from spiritual practice. It is the act of looking at your own trauma, not as a mark of shame, but as a map to your hidden power. It is the understanding that the most devastating betrayals you have experienced were not just events that happened to you, but crucibles that forged your character. The woman who has faced her demons and integrated her shadow does not seek a man to complete her. She seeks a partner to share her wholeness with. She has become a source, not a seeker. She is not chasing a fantasy. She is living a reality so vibrant and authentic that it naturally draws to her what is meant for her. This is not about passive waiting. It is about active, conscious becoming. It is about building a life so rich with purpose and meaning that a partner would be an addition, a magnificent bonus, not a fundamental necessity. This is the great paradox. By ceasing the frantic search for the one, you become the one. You stop looking for a mirror to reflect your value, and you become the light itself, shining from a place of radical inner peace and self-possession. The work is not in finding him, but in finding the king within yourself, the sovereign consciousness that commands your life. She understands now that the pain of her past, the childhood wounds that taught her to seek love externally, were not a curse but a catalyst. This journey is the slow, deliberate work of reparenting herself. She is learning to give herself the validation she once craved from others. She is becoming the source of her own emotional regulation, no longer a ship tossed on the turbulent sea of another's moods. The woman who begins to individuate confronts the deep, subconscious patterns that have governed her choices, the compulsion to fix broken men, the desperate need to be chosen, the fear of abandonment that made her abandon herself. This is not a comfortable process. It is the shedding of a skin she has worn for a lifetime. But beneath the old skin, a new, more resilient one is revealed. This transformation is not a solitary affair, but it must be an independent one. The woman in this process is not looking for a man to hold her hand through the work. She is doing the work so that when a man of substance arrives, he finds a partner, not a project. The animus, once a projected fantasy onto every potential partner, now begins to reveal itself as an internal force. It is the part of her that makes her assertive, that gives her the courage to speak her truth, that allows her to set firm boundaries without apology. The animus, when integrated, is not a tyrannical master, but a supportive inner partner. It gives her the power to act, to build, to create a life that is an authentic expression of her soul. She ceases to be a passive recipient of life and becomes its active co-creator. This is the very essence of becoming sovereign. A sovereign woman is not a woman who has no need of others. She is a woman who has no need of external validation to feel worthy. Her sense of self is not tied to her relationship status, her attractiveness in the eyes of others, or her accomplishments. Her worth is inherent, unassailable, a quiet truth that resides deep within her bones. She practices the Stoic art of detachment, not from people, but from outcomes. She can love deeply, give generously, and connect intimately, but she does so without expectation, without a silent demand for a return on her emotional investment. Marcus Aurelius spoke of finding tranquility not by changing the world, but by changing your perception of it. The individuated woman applies this wisdom to her relationships. She does not try to change the man to fit her fantasy. She accepts him for who he is and decides if that reality is a worthy companion to her own. This is the great shift. The desperate hunt for a soulmate gives way to a quiet cultivation of one's own soul. The energy that was once spent on analyzing texts, obsessing over a man's behavior, and trying to decipher his intentions is now channeled into self-discovery. She is building her life, not waiting for it to begin. She is creating a world so beautiful and so whole that a man would be honored to enter it, not needed to complete it. The paradox is that as she becomes less needy, she becomes more magnetic. Her stillness, her confidence, her profound inner peace. These are the qualities that speak to a man's unconscious desire for a partner who is a source of calm, not chaos. A woman who is whole does not inspire a man to rescue her. She inspires him to rise to her level. She is not a prize to be won. She is a universe to be explored. This is the final, most liberating stage of the journey. The woman who has done the work understands that the one is not a person she finds, but the person she becomes. And in the quiet moments of her fully realized existence, she finds that she is not alone. She is, for the first time, truly and authentically her own partner. And yet, a quiet danger remains. Even after doing the work, even after integrating the shadow and finding one's inner sovereign, there is the temptation to turn this newfound wholeness into a weapon, a shield of superiority against others. The ego, ever cunning, can co-opt the journey of individuation and turn it into a sterile fortress, a place where one is so complete and self-contained that no one else can truly enter. This is not the goal. The goal is not to become so detached that you are an island, but to become so grounded that you can truly connect without losing yourself. The Stoic ideal of apatheia is not a cold indifference, but a profound inner peace that allows you to engage with the world without being tossed about by its storms. It is a peace that allows you to love a man not for what you hope he will become, but for the human being he is. The man who is drawn to this woman is not a fixer or a rescuer. He is a partner. He is drawn not to her need, but to her light. And for the first time, she is able to see him clearly, not through the distorting lens of her projections, but as he is. She can appreciate his strengths without idealizing him, and accept his flaws without being shattered by them. This is the moment when the archetypes, the idealized fantasies of the animus and anima, dissolve back into the unconscious, and two whole people stand before each other. He is not her missing piece, he is her fellow traveler. She is not his divine feminine, she is his co-pilot on the journey of life. The relationship is no longer a desperate search for completion, but a beautiful and courageous collaboration between two individuals who have already found their own centers. This kind of love is a choice, not a compulsion. It is a decision made from a place of abundance, not scarcity. It is the antithesis of the toxic codependency that so often masquerades as romance. This is the love of two whole people, not two halves trying to make a whole. It is a love that does not demand or cling or manipulate because it has no need to. It is the love of a woman who has already validated herself. She is no longer looking for a man to give her a ring or a title or a sense of security. She has already built her own kingdom, and she is simply inviting a worthy man to share in the sovereignty of her life. And in this final, luminous stage of the journey, she understands that the pain, the loneliness, the endless nights of self-reflection were not a waste. They were the crucible that forged her soul. She no longer fears being alone because she knows she is her own most steadfast companion. She has liberated herself from the tyranny of external validation, from the endless pursuit of an idealized partner, and from the exhausting performance of a persona that was never truly her. She has finally come home to herself, and in that homecoming, she has found the greatest love of all, The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.